what's your favorite thing about each other?
Oh, I feel like we've said it enough now, you know?
Yeah?
No, I'm joking. Oh, no, I'm joking. We can.
Yeah, we've said a lot.
I have to say one thing. I want to say one thing. I think one of my the favorite thing about you is how you see things, how you see situations. Like they say that with a monk mindset, you should be able to see things it's called, what's the word?
Equipoised, equilibrium.
Equipoised,
equanimity.
yeah. Equanimity, I always get that word wrong. So whether something goes bad or something goes good, you're able to have a very like neutral mindset to that situation and not get too excited when things go really, really well and not get too sad when things get really bad. And I think from all the ups and downs that we've been through, whether it's with your career or whatever it's been, every time something goes wrong, even if like you miss a plane, whatever it is, he never gets to a point where he's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever, which is my usual reaction to, like before would have been my usual reaction to things. He is always just like, it's just part of the plan. Like this just makes the story so much better. And I just really appreciate that because it's made me not overreact and made me see perspective in so many situations and made me realize that actually, yeah, like that quality of, and he doesn't get too excited. Anything good that happens, like whether he wins awards or whatever, like the coolest thing may happen and he never gets too excited. Like he appreciates it and he just, you know, in his mind, he prays and offers it back to his spiritual teacher. And I just think it's such a deep practice to have, to not get too excited and bask in your success. Is bask the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. And not be too sad and like kind of sit in your sadness for too long. And I think he really has that great balance of being able to snap out of things and seeing things. He doesn't even have to snap out of it. He just doesn't see it in that way. Like he's trained his mind to see things in a way where everything is just part of the journey and nothing is up and down, up and down, up and down. It's all quite like a little wave rather than like a tide. So yeah.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And hers is so easy. Anyone who's met her already knows this. Literally, like every one of my friends I introduce her to, they fall in love with her and become best friends with her. And then I'm third wheeling all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like it's the best feeling in the world that everyone I introduce her to or everyone she meets, she just has this pure, genuine light. And all I'm like in life is like, don't screw that up. Like, don't mess that up. Like let her be that light. Like, just let her be what she is. And, you know, how her parents have raised her, like how her grandmother's had an impact on her, like everything she has, like her spiritual teacher, her spirituality, everything that she has, like it's so pure and genuine and full of love. Like I always tell her she's like the best person I've met. And I just want, you know, I just want everyone to experience that. Like I want everyone to experience that. And that's partly why we're doing this podcast, is because I want everyone to experience that. There are people in the world who just have no agendas, that are love, that are being love at all times, that don't have any like negative motive towards anyone or don't want to have like envy or jealousy or bring someone else down to feel better. And I think she has that in abundance. And everyone feels it. Like as soon as she walks into a room, she lights it up with her presence and energy. And that doesn't mean like being the loudest person in the room. She's rarely that. It doesn't mean being the most talkative person. It just means being that energy. And I know all of you who know her know that and feel it. And I get to feel it every day. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think that's true, but thanks. I do love, I've just realized, I've been through so many ups and downs of my own journey of, you know, jealousy and whatever it is, and not being that person for people and not being someone who can who can be the joy for somebody else. But going through that and coming out the other end through a lot of journaling, I've talked about this before, and a lot of introspection, I just realized I actually get so much more joy out of being other people's joy. Like I love making people laugh. I love making people feel loved, and I love making people feel like they're cared for and looked after and whatever it is. I love, and I've realized actually it's more of a selfish thing because I love doing that for other people. I get the joy out of it. And so, yeah, I think if you can light up someone's life in some small way or like make someone laugh, you just never know what they're going through. And so I just think it's such a sweet thing to share and give out to someone. Like you can give a lot of things out, but if you're able to give love and happiness to someone in a small way every single day, like it's such a beautiful, it's a gift. Like it's such a sweet gift to give out to people. So I'm grateful that I'm able to do that for you sometimes and for other people.
Thanks for giving.
Sorry guys, I do an American accent whenever I'm like, it's probably the worst American accent that you guys have heard, but I do accents. Yeah.
I love her accent.
Yeah.
Because I'm terrible at them. They're fun. Okay. Next thing is, do
Yeah.
you fight, and how do you deal with that conflict?
Yeah, we fight.
Yeah, we fight.
Yeah, we do fight. But I mean, I have to say, fights don't last that long with us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the key thing. Like, we have been through, especially when we weren't understanding each other's love languages, especially when I wasn't understanding him more so than the other way around. When we argued, my thing would be shutting down and not wanting to speak about it, and like not communicating and not answering phone calls. And for him, it would be like, no, I want to talk about it and I want to get through it, and let's really discuss everything. And at the time, it just felt like, for me, I was like, no, I need space. But the more I've accepted the way that he likes to resolve things, the more I realize that actually makes so much more sense. Because yeah, you may need space for a short period of time, but unless you talk through it and process it together, you never get over that. And then it's brought up in the next argument, and the argument after that, and the argument after that. Whereas if you're able to really sit down and work through whatever, even if it's a really small issue, like picking your shoes up from in front of the door, which is something we've spoken about a few times, but even if it's something as small as that, just discussing and explaining, okay, fine, this makes me feel like you don't value me, because who else are you expecting to pick up those shoes? For example, it's a mutual thing. I leave my shoes there too. But I'm just saying, even if you break it down to that level of saying, actually, it's not the action, it's what I feel you're thinking when you're doing that action. And so it usually isn't the action. It's usually not what the person's done. It's usually how it makes you feel from that person's action, if that makes sense.
That makes loads of sense. Great point.
And so I think breaking it down to that level of the feeling you're getting from that person by him doing that or by her doing that actually resolves the issue so much faster. And that has been completely you, because he really, we've never slept really on an argument. We've at least discussed it before. And I really, really believe in that. I heard it so much, but the more we've argued and the more we've resolved it before we've gone to sleep, like the next morning we are fresh and ready to go, like nothing's happened. And not because we're ignoring it, and not because we're pretending like it didn't happen or we've brushed it under the rug, but because we have really talked about it and tried to understand it from each other's point of view. And I really think that's made such a big difference to the way we argue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's such an important point. I think the point around, it's not about the action that hurts, it's about how that action makes someone feel is so much more important. Because sometimes I'm doing something really small and I'm getting it wrong, but I'm like, oh, it's so small. But then she's like, no, it's big. And I'm like, well, how's it big? And then she's like, because this is how it makes me feel. I'm like, oh, that is big, right?
Yeah.
And then I have that moment of like, aha, like the penny drops, and I'm, oh, okay, it's big. It's not small again.
Because you're never really doing things to, like, it's not like you're doing it intentionally.
Totally.
And it's also understanding that aspect of it. Like saying that and always reminding yourself that if you know that person loves you, then they are never going to be doing things to intentionally like prod at you or intentionally make you feel a negative emotion. And if we are doing that, then we should be very aware of it. And sometimes saying things like remarks that are in a sarcastic tone or whatever, actually those things can build up and you feel like you're saying it in a jokey way. I used to do that all the time, saying things in like a sarcastic, funny way to try and get a point across to you. But now I realize that actually just asking you in a polite way, in a sweet way, in a loving way, can have so much more impact than me sarcastically throwing something in there. And yeah, so I think the way that we say things and the thought behind it actually makes such a difference. And now I know, like, whenever you do anything, even if it's small, when I process it in my mind before I say a lot of things to you, and actually it goes away because I'm like, I know the intention is not that. And if I do want you to do something, then I'll just ask you politely. And I've noticed the difference that it makes in the way that we speak to each other and when we think about it and process it like that, rather than just shouting out whatever comes into our mind. Like that's not going to help, like not being able to control what's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. And anyone who says they don't argue isn't true. Like everyone argues, everyone fights, everyone has disagreements, and they're good to work through, because disagreements usually just arise because we all have different upbringings. We all have different backgrounds. We're all raised differently. We're raised in different amounts of space. We're raised differently in terms of responsibility. And so now you're putting two different people with two different responsibilities together. And if you don't argue about it, you don't disagree about it, if you don't talk it out, then all you do, like she said, is you just end up living the same thing again and again and again. it's really important to draw boundaries as well, like recognizing like these are certain things that really annoy me. Like to say that when you first move in with someone.
Yeah.
These are the things that annoy me. Like these are my top 3 things that will get on my nerves. Like let's try and avoid that. And the other person gets to say the same. You're going to just avoid so much hassle rather than like thinking, oh, for the first week, it's fine. I'm going to do everything for that person. And then you end up feeling upset because they're not reciprocating or whatever. Just set your expectations, draw the boundaries, be really open and honest about what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And then figure out which parts you can help each other on.